Hello everyone, we're going to be back in Assassin's Creed Odyssey Discovery Mode. That is going to be the Parthenon, which we did a tour of in another video. And today we're going to be descending into the streets of Athens to actually visit one of the homes of Pericles. And as we walk through there, you're going to be seeing a lot of details of what it was like to live in the upper crust of society. But Athens as a total population would have had something on the order of 120 to 180,000 people all told in the city itself. So that includes not only the citizens, who would have made 30 to 50,000 of those, but the total would have included women, children, and slave. And a lot of them, the poorer people, would have lived in smaller habitations, like communal apartments, single bedroom dwellings, and all that. And it was only really the rich who could have these full-bodied houses with courtyards that we're going to be visiting today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop on over to this elite house. And we're going to start off here at the main gate. So one of the things you'll notice is it does have a wall around it, and well, actually let's take another quick look with the eagle here to see the dwellings. Yeah, a wall around it to give it a bit of privacy so that people inside can walk about, relax, and still have, like I said, the privacy, and then also a bit of the security, so you can see some guards there on the side. Let's go ahead and pop on over there and talk real briefly about the guards. So of course in the ancient past you wouldn't really have had the police force of the modern day, but with these ancient Greek city-states they did have something that was known as the astronomoi. This is mostly found in the Greek cities of Anatolia, but basically it's going to be a group of officials who are going to be seeing after the enforcement of laws. And there would have been different bodies of them looking after things, making sure that people follow regulations, both in public and private. But then you would have had a bit of more muscle behind that. And so in Athens in particular, they had a group of 300 state-owned slaves, and they were often actually foreign Scythians who function as kind of, like I said, the muscle. So while the astronomoi may have been the ones who were mostly enforcing from a higher level, the on-the-street pave pounders would have been these state-owned slaves who were there to do crown control, arresting of people, and detention and things like that. So that's a little bit of the protection that we're seeing here. And then in addition, you can imagine that people who were a bit more well-off may have been able to hire some mercenaries or private security to guard their dwellings, and that's what we're seeing represented here. So now let's go back into first person and take a look at the house itself. So as we make our way up, you'll notice here that, and let's go ahead and go in first person actually, might as well, that it is quite a beautiful house. Again, one of the things that we'll be seeing a lot of is going to be the colors represented in all the houses. Absolutely beautiful. The past is not at all like you see in the museums where everything is going to be in black and white. This is the striking colors. People definitely wanted to make their houses beautiful. As for the construction of the homes, like I said, there's a difference between what's poor and what's rich. For the poorer people, you probably would have been seeing some mud brick houses, whereas here for the elites, more permanent dwellings where you would have seen stone used more often, and then on the side you probably would have seen the walls plastered, and then finally tiles on the top. Also looking around the house, many houses would have had windows, although most of the times these windows were quite small, as you're seeing there, and usually elevated in order to continue to preserve the privacy. You wouldn't see many ground floor windows, and the ones that you did often would have had various things, shutters and decorations on them to prevent anyone from seeing in easily, but from the inside looking out you can still get the views. So that's a little bit of the privacy. Most of them would have been actually open air, although if you were richer and probably later in the time period, you would have been able to access some of the glass and put that on your windows. But again, this is something that's unique for the rich. Now as we go inside the house, and yeah, you can see the private bodyguards there guarding that entrance. As we go inside the house, you start to see some religious figures. So they did have beliefs, the ancient Greeks did, that there were various gods and forms of those gods that were associated with protecting the hearth. So Hestia, the goddess of domestic hearth, Zeus, Herkeos, protector of the home, all sorts of different deities that you want to pray to and have in your home. So in this case, here's one of the deities greeting entrance to the home. You see all sorts of decorative stuff in the entryway here. Awesome pots, places to burn oil, presumably I think that's to put a little lamp. Resting location for guests, beautiful pots on display, and perhaps, I guess, part of a hoplites panoply on display there. Moving inside, one of the things that we want to mention in the house is it's going to be divided into different main sections. So one of the main things that you'll be noticing is going to be here, which is going to be just the courtyard. So in every house, as we saw in the flyover, there's going to be a central courtyard, and that's because, well, two reasons. The first reason is you want a central courtyard because in ancient Greece, it's going to be quite hot. And so having a central courtyard here does a lot for your natural air conditioning. And they would have oftentimes had some sort of covering over here to prevent even more lighting in the event that it was really, really hot, so you could shade this. But overall, it would create a natural uplifting of the air and cause a draft through the house. That's one of the things that's important about the courtyard, and we'll come back and revisit a little bit more of the details. But the other things about the house to note is that right here we're entering, well, the bottom and the front of the house. So usually the bottom and the front is going to be the area that's going to be preserved for the men, whereas the rear and the top is going to be for the women, typically held most away from the public eye. And let's go ahead and move into the first room here. And what you'll be noticing is, well, a lot of people off at work. So oftentimes at people's homes, you would have had a domestic workshop doing all kinds of different things. So women would have been on a loom weaving. Here it looks like a mother teaching her daughter. Slaves might have been at work as well. So there would have been a lot of these textiles that are for domestic use. So they would have made a lot of their own clothes or a lot of their own bedding and carpets and curtains and whatnot. And if they had more, they could presumably sell those off. Other activities that would have been taking place here is, well, you can see a bit of an office work here, someone taking notes on the papyrus or on the wax tablets and then storing those, perhaps someone, a wealthy landowner, running their estates, or perhaps the affairs of the state, and then a bunch of other things taking place. So you might have people making, pottery, or perhaps pressing olive oil, or making cheese, all kinds of stuff inside of this workplace. Here you can see a guy designing his pot, so he has a little wheel there, and after that he'll go about painting it up. And again, more scrolls keeping records, Owl of Athena, some stuff for the statue, different components there. And so yeah, workshops were pretty common, and then here you can even see them making these little bird boxes. Pets as well would have been common in the house. And speaking of pets, most of those would have been housed in the central courtyard. The courtyard is going to be important, as I said, for being this kind of private but yet outdoor space. So that has a lot of importance. One, if you have pets, you're going to be keeping presumably them here in this area, but then also women who typically didn't have much of a public life, and so wouldn't have been outdoors too often. They would have had their time in the outdoors, most oftentimes in the courtyard, and therefore the children would have come with them. You could have seen lots of relaxing, playing musical instruments, eating, and we'll be getting to the kitchen. We'll talk a bit more about food, but yeah, this is a main central locus of the house, where a lot of activities taking place, and also some dedications to the gods, some wine that you could drink, and here's going to be an altar to make offerings to your god. So yeah, tons of activity taking place here, and braziers here to burn coals, places for torches and whatnot for internal lighting and potentially heating, and you could host a lot of people here if you needed to. Let's go and poke off onto the right hand side here. So again, if you were to proceed upwards, you get to the back and the top of the house, which is even more private, so typically the women's quarters. And then if we get here on the bottom and still the front of the house, we're going to be here in the Symposium. So the Symposium is going to be a room where typically you're going to be seeing, well, the Symposium, is more of an activity where the men are going to be joining together in the male side of the house, the andron. Those are going to be the male-focused rooms, whereas the gynekon is going to be for the women. But yes, in the male-oriented rooms, this is where you'd invite your guests, and typically you'd be having this kind of after your last supper where you get together with your friends, you drink wine, often watered down, relax. You would have music, women might come and entertain you, dancing, eating, drinking, all kinds of stuff, and of course talking politics or talking about poetry and whatnot, and all kinds of relaxing on these beds or on the floor. So definitely a very regal quarters, especially if you're going to be in the upper class. This would have been a very important room here. As we make our way onwards, let's go ahead and explore some of the more rear quarters of the house. So a lot of stuff in the house would have had to do with, well, you have to survive when you're in your home. They're often going to be having, well, food. That's one of the main things, and we'll be seeing next door your hygiene. So food here in the back, typically out of the way, you would have seen both storage and cooking. In terms of food, well, what can you expect? It's a little bit different from the modern Mediterranean diet, so you're not going to be seeing tomatoes, you're not going to be seeing the cucumber, which you'd associate with modern Mediterranean food and dining, but you'll still be seeing a lot of stuff that will be recognizable. So meats, for instance, would have been something that you'd see a lot in the diet, although it's a little bit different. Meats are typically going to be associated with religious practices where you would take some animal, sacrifices to the god, give the god their portion and offering, and then the remainder of the meats is the stuff that's going to be distributed to the people who participate in the ritual, and you'd be able to consume that. In terms of preservation, the meats, you'd probably eat it relatively fresh. If not, you would then preserve it by either salting it or perhaps even smoking it and saving it. Other things you'd be seeing around here, well, probably fish. I don't think it's so much in display in the back. No, it looks like it's here. Yes, this would have been a major part of the diet. More so than meat would have been a lot of stuff from the sea. The Athenians had to go out pretty far because they exhausted a lot of their fisheries locally. But having plentiful fish was the sign that you were a very rich person. And actually, if we go outside here, I think there is a bit more of the seafood platters out here. So octopuses, squids, cuttlefish, all kinds of stuff from the sea was definitely something that the Greeks adored and loved. And yeah, let's get back into the kitchen and storeroom here. So you can see some of that. So that's going to be your meat. You would have had various dairy products as well, cheese, things that they could produce in the home, vegetables and fruit, lots of olives, definitely a popular choice. We can see over here more of the vegetables and some more. And oh, actually over here you can see some wheat and barley and other things that they would have used to make their bread. Often in the home to bake it. And then on top of the vegetables, you can also see some of the fruit. And some of the fruit that they would have been getting, pears were quite common, but some of the more exotic stuff would have been the importation of apples, and then later you'd have pomegranates and even apricots. And also nuts and various other things around the house. So all of that would have been stored here. Again, a lot of the stuff about preservation just has to do with getting rid of the water content. So that's typically going to be done with salting or smoking whatever you're going to be eating. Or oftentimes, if it's something you might want to just store in a cool, dry location underground, you could do that. Or additionally, you can do the pickling process as well to preserve stuff and make fruits and vegetables into jams and other ways to have preservatives. So that's all taking place here. You would have also had cooking. So utensils here, you can put it up on a hot plate or a grill, or a lot of the times they would have cooked stuff within these clay pots. So this is fairly common, and these clay pots were meant to be moved around the house, so you're not necessarily always going to be cooking in the same place where you store your food. You can bring it out and about to cook it elsewhere. Ooh, that looks like that's a hazard right there. Oh my god. But yeah, moving along, so back here you're going to have a bathroom. So the bathroom, this is quite elite here. So they would have had a bathtub, which you can fill up with water to bathe, and here a little bit of a towel to rinse off. Water would have been something that you would have gotten from a local, perhaps private or public fountain or well, filled it up with buckets, and then rinsed off here. But then also you have another station here where you can dry off and rinse and scrub off using sponges. They would have also had a strigil, which is essentially a scraper, which I'm not sure if they have it represented here, but yeah, strigil is something that you see typically represented, where basically you take it and you rub it against yourself and it'll scrape off the oil and other stuff that you have on your body. And yeah, so you can see stuff for washing, but as for going to the bathroom, they didn't have toilets, and so they would have used chamber pots pretty often, and a chamber pot you don't necessarily have to use in the bathroom. You might use that in other private areas of your house. And yeah, so here's the main atrium and courtyard, and now let's get into the more private areas. So now we're going to proceed upstairs, proceeding upwards, and again, this is going to be the area where you would have seen a lot of women hanging out because, again, as I said, they're not able to be in public all too often, but they still want to enjoy the outdoors, so that's what you're seeing here. Women occupying the upper areas, and especially in a place in Athens where it gets hot, you might want to be outside where you can get a breeze, but still be under the shade. So you see a lot of that. A lot of that also taking place in areas like India and in locations where it's hot. A lot of families will find themselves up top on the rooftops, especially in the late evening as things start to cool down and it gets a bit more enjoyable. So lots of stuff here to be relaxing. And finally, I think we do see a master bedroom off in this quarters. So sleeping accommodations might have been downstairs, but then if you're wealthy enough and you have room upstairs, here you can see a sleeping quarter. So yeah, a pretty simple bed here. Might have had a little bit of padding with some pillows, but mostly a lot of the stuff is just meant to be enjoyed open air, and people could have slept in different chambers. And then also within the house, you would have seen these dividers. I talked about this in our previous video, but essentially the structural elements of the house are fairly wide. So you have big open spaces, and then once you're inside, then you subdivide that with these kind of lattice dividers for privacy or to separate men from the women or sleeping from the public areas, things of that nature. And then finally, this is a very rich house, and you have a very upper top floor, a fireplace to stay warm, maybe even cook and sing songs and chant and do whatnot. So yeah, very, very elite house that we're seeing here. So that's about it for the tour of this ancient Greek house. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Definitely check it out in discovery mode itself. That blue path that we were seeing as a tour that Assassin's Creed Odyssey discovery mode will give you itself, but I hope you guys enjoyed my take on things. We went a little bit deeper and explored a couple facets that aren't necessarily in the discovery mode. So yeah, that's it for our other video on the Greek daily life and life in the home. Let me know what other content you'd like me to cover, and I will definitely be looking to do that in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one. Peace out.